So I offer that to you as like a content warning, because I'm getting some stuff off my chest. Thank you to everyone who made this possible. I really love you. Are they hot or are they white? Did I love you? Why is consent sexy? Did I love you? If I want to die so much, why am I so careful when I cross the road? Is it nostalgia? I yearn for a time before astrology. I yearn for a time before nostalgia. I didn't know I could drown this long without dying. Did I love you? I'm being bitten by something I can't see. I think I loved you, but my friends would always look at me with pity when I said it, and I would pretend I didn't notice, but their eyes would say, how can you love someone when you don't exist? If the person you love punches you and you don't walk away, is that love? Is love a hyper-object? I can't see depression, but I know it's real. Remember that time I ran from my house and I got to yours with my hot water bottle still warm and you told me that was really cute, but sex with me is boring. Was that love? I haven't read a book by a white man for many years, but when Curry Slut sent me that article about hyperobjects, I did read all the random pages available on Google Books because I am both comforted and destroyed by the thought of something being so big that it defeats the idea of what a thing is in the first place, like global warming, like the internet, like love. Hyperobjects. Maybe no one should write about hyperobjects. Everyone who writes about the internet sounds like an idiot anyway. Sometimes when I'm fucking Nick, I ask him, what does it feel like when you walk into a room, 6'3", big dick, cute nose, Snow White, wrinkles in all the right places, kind eyes, straight like a walking fruit pop, trauma buffer, hairless, anus tastes like apples. What's it like when your dick gets hard in your trousers? Why do I care anyway? Sometimes I feel like he lets me steal his soul, be a white king for a night. Nowhere else do I feel this comfortable orchestrating sex for my pleasure alone. I'm nearly 30 and I don't feel old, but I don't want to be alive either, and a white man is the only person who sucked my dick, so maybe that's why. Is depression a hyperobject or a disease? I can't see it, but I know it's real. If a punch feels familiar, that doesn't mean it's love. I went on a date with a 23-year-old Aries rising, and she asked me if I felt old, and I looked at my hands and said, my body does what I need it to, I guess. I'm lucky, which is not really an answer to that question and not really true, because my body does not move in the morning. Every morning before I grab the mask from my bedside table, I feel dead, which is not what bodies need to do. But this is less an experience I can categorize by age, and when she touched me, I turned to cardboard. When older people kill themselves, it's depressing because it's proof that in fact it does not get better, despite the suicidal person's diligent insistence that it might. This is going down better than I thought. We are the most optimistic people in the world, the chronic depressives, the suicidal, we are. So it's a bummer when old people kill themselves. Sometimes I tell myself that with each depressive episode I have, it will get easier, that if I can just push through to the next one, I'll have more practice, that this heaviness will start to feel like a friend, like a weighted blanket maybe, instead of a shroud. But what I'm realizing is that each time I get tireder too. What I'm realizing is that if a punch feels familiar, that doesn't mean it's love. The familiarity of depression doesn't ever feel like a bonus, you know, it's more like, oh fuck, you again. Let me pretend I'm on the phone right now actually, but then the little microphone hole in the phone turns into a black hole and sucks you inside it and you're just in that place again. Sometimes I feel like the only thing keeping me from killing myself is the pressure of writing a suicide note. But I feel like knowing that about myself makes me want to kill myself even more. Some people get rid of all their shit in preparation for killing themselves, but that's not really my style. Like, I personally feel like one of the big upsides of death is not having to move my stuff around ever again. When people ask me why I moved to New York from London, I often say, so I could be depressed in private. And I say it like it's a joke, you know. I imagine it's something a stunning and mysterious newcomer with a masculine smirk would say, but I'm just a very earnest and sad person who is telling the truth. The most depressing thing about depression is the people who do not come, who will tweet about depression but who will not come. Trust me, no depressed person wants to say this out loud, but it's true. Depression is needing people so badly for your survival and wanting no one to look at you at the same time, and I think that's very confusing for everyone. If you're you're chronically depressed, there will probably come a time when you will tell the people around you feel like you want to die, and they will not hear you. They will tell you about themselves and you will listen, slipping the pain back into your pocket slowly so as not to disturb them. Perhaps they did not hear you. Perhaps they are very busy. Perhaps they are suffering. Perhaps they don't believe you. How do they know you're making it up? Honestly, it makes me extremely nervous to complain about the quality of care depressed people receive. It does not feel right that I could fail so terribly at being happy but still demand help. I also don't want to become that meme that's like trying to go to sleep at night but thinking about how I care for everyone else, but when I need it, no one cares for me. Because one, some people do show up, and they're normally not the people you would expect to, but they do it very quietly and they save your life. So like, out of respect for them and fear that you'll lose what little support you do have, if you're a bitch about it, it's best to keep quiet. And two, no one wants to be a cliche. Three, everyone's out here claiming to be that person who cares for everyone else but doesn't get cared for, and mathematically that doesn't make sense. Some of us need to be the people who are just taking and taking for that critique of care to work. So then I'm like, fuck, maybe that's me. But I guess what I'm saying is, it's depressing because you're like, oh no, I just used my absolute last morsel of energy to explain to the people around me what I need to stay alive, and they're not going to do it. It's a very gloomy reality. The only people who've ever been helpful to me when I'm suicidal are other people who've thought about killing themselves. It's like that poem, that I want a gay man for president poem, but it's like, yeah, good, and I only want people who've tried to kill themselves to ever talk about suicide. I'll say it again. The most depressing thing about depression is how unequipped and unwilling everyone is to deal with it. And that's only like a little bit a drag. It's mostly just a fact. It's very confusing to me because from where I'm standing, it seems natural that everyone would at some point have considered ending their own lives. To me, that's not even a particularly dark or morbid or shocking thought. It just makes sense that as humans, as millennial humans who love options and love consent, considering that being born is the biggest violation of consent ever, it makes sense to me that we would want to get to know our options around that, you know? But it becomes clear to a suicidal person that in fact not everyone has considered killing themselves. It becomes clear very quickly to a depressed person that not everyone experiences depression, because depression is not a bad day. It's not being tired, it's not living under forced heteronormativity or capitalism, it's not being a queer person of colour, it's not even being hungry. I'm tired of people saying they're depressed when they're not depressed, and I feel like a monster for wanting to judge people by the quality of their suffering, and I feel like a child for arguing over words. But when I'm depressed, I feel like I'm wearing a mask, and behind that mask I'm a small boy made out of Play-Doh, lying face down in a puddle, watching astrologers beef with each other on Instagram, wondering how I can drown this long without dying. Sometimes it's not your word to use. When I'm very depressed, I think about killing myself multiple times a day, and you know, the fear isn't that I might actually do it. The fear is that these thoughts will last so long that they'll become normal. Anyway, I would like to shout out the new Mamma Mia movie, because no matter how deep of a depressive state I may fall into on the subway, I can always come out for long enough to feel very seen by the fact that it's called Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. So that has been a really big help. I had my first major depressive episode when I was 22, which at the time felt very late, like I was just making it up, but I've always been a late bloomer. I was completely flat-chested until I was 18, when I just literally woke up with 2 double Ds one day, and my mum called them comedy breasts because everyone was shocked. And I was very polite about it, but I noticed the top of buildings a lot more after that because I was always looking up, which is funny because I actually love my tits when they're in your mouth. At the airport, my mum said she feels like she's underwater at family events, and I wondered if all South Asians feel like they're underwater when they're in a room full of other South Asians, because we're so good at avoidance and repression, but sometimes when we all have to look at each other, it's hard to pretend the weight doesn't exist, even though it's always there. Do South Asians trigger each other just by being in the same room? If I love my body but I'm repulsed by yours, am I still a feminist? One of my hobbies is talking to ex-Muslims who don't care for religion anymore, and I'm going to go to hell, but I love it because it's validating and it's hot. Hey Sandy, do you remember that time you went on Instagram Live and no one came to watch? I don't know if it's cool to think this anymore, but I'm sorry, I actually do think all mentally ill people are geniuses. Though I personally do hate the phrase mentally ill. It makes me cringe to say it, a bit like the word pansexual, but you know what I mean. I'm getting better at living with depression. Is getting better at living with depression the same as getting better at pretending? Is it the same as acceptance? Is it the same as giving up? Is it the same as making a friend? Is it the same as seeing something vibrant and looking in the other direction, smiling? Yesterday, I lay on my back on a bench made out of stone that had been warmed in the sun, and it felt like hands along my spine, and I felt peaceful, and I wondered if this was love, if this could be what death feels like. I wondered if this could be what life feels like.